the COVID-19 virus affect the 2020 election? Of course it will affect the election. However, I don't think it'll affect it a ton because a lot of people already have their mind made up. So I believe it's only going to have a moderate impact for those that haven't made up their mind yet.
So, when it comes to the 2020 presidential election, I think the closing of polls is going to extremely be impacted, and I think in a very bad way, in a negative way. And I also think that to avoid that, states need to make it where people can vote from home, or make it where it's less people are going to be in a building.
I think it's going to be very impactful because on the one hand, if less people have access to polls because they're closed in their state, it might be harder for them to go out. But then on the other hand, there may be some people who weren't willing to go out on their own time. And maybe if they do like an online thing where you vote online, that might increase turnout. So I don't know, I think it could go either way depending on what they do.
My response was moderately impacted, and I think that it does impact somewhat the mindset of voters going in, but overall, I think the results will be similar. I think it's more of what's inside people's heads when they're voting, how that impacts their thought process, their decision making. But overall, I think what they originally want when they're in the voting box will turn out to be a similar result with or without polls.
I think the 2020 presidential election will be extremely impacted by it if it keeps going, because it will be really hard to do absentee ballots and online voting. I mean, the disaster that happened, with I think Florida or Ohio, one of the states that did the caucuses, the disaster of online voting. I mean, we'd have to try to do that and be like a disaster. And I mean, we're not really, I think it would be just really big and impactful because, it does impact the elderly people, like this flu, and those are the people that are going to the polls and voting, and they're not going to want to get out and vote with everything that's happening now. So it's going to be really hard to try to situate, and I feel like trying to make this right and trying to situate everything so everything so that everything, getting all the absentee ballots, there are going to be a few gaps in the net that you try to cast, if that makes sense. There are going to be people that don't get their vote when they would normally vote, kind of thing.
Many people who vote don't vote early. You'll have a good bit that actually do. There's going to be irregular turnouts, but you're not going to have the swing votes come and vote on election day, and then you will most likely not get any of your younger generations to vote on election day too.
I think it's going to have a huge effect, and I hate to be like a conspiracy theorist, and I usually don't, fall into those traps, but there's a lot of suspicious activity surrounding the origins of this virus and where it's hitting and how it's being handled and the fact that it's in an election year. And I don't want to believe any of those things to be true, but even if they're not, the fact that the whole country is shutting down like some zombie apocalypse is happening is going to affect how people vote. It's going to affect what opportunities they have to vote. It's going to affect how people trust or mistrust the government or its handling of the current situation. So it could go any way, but it's going to have an impact regardless.